Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight for the Rock for Recovery virtual event, where we give you daily spotlights on agencies providing recovery and support services, weekly testimonials of and from individuals in recovery. My name is Chad Woodman. I'm a police officer with the Janesville Police Department, and I run the Death Recovery or Prison Program, and have been a member of the Substance Misuse Task Force since approximately 2015. Tonight, I'm joined by my good friend, Julie Bowden, who has been in recovery for several years now. And we're just going to have her tell her story to all of you tonight. So thank you. Julie?
Well, I'm currently 40 years old, and I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a background and how I got into addiction. And it started actually at a young age for me, within my teenage years. Well, by definition, I came from an average family, grew up in the country, youngest of 4 siblings, no history of abuse or neglect. You know, all my physical needs were met. Although the one thing that I think set me apart is I was an emotionally sensitive kid. So the commentary in my mind was frequently telling me that I wasn't enough, not good enough, not smart enough, not pretty enough, whatever it may be, etc. So one thing is my parents were busy building a business. So even when they weren't working, they were always seemed preoccupied. They were kind of, they were there in my life, but not present, if that makes sense. You can't be present and preoccupied at the same moment, I guess. I can say that my dad did drink a lot, but he did provide for his family. And like I said, I mentioned, I was so sensitive that I took everything personally, it seemed, and which caused a lot of emotional instability. And my first major depression hit at 14, and I felt hopeless. Nonstop negative feelings led me to like-minded peers who were also seeking escape. And that's when I started smoking pot. So I was around 15, 16 years old. And at 17, I met the person who would become my favorite using companion, my husband and the father of my 2 children. And I followed him into using cocaine in my early 20s, followed by alcoholism in my late 20s to early 30s, and the finale of heroin addiction at age 32. But although within those years I did have periods of abstinence, and I call it abstinence and not recovery, because I was lacking that freedom of inner turmoil. And recovery to me is a total, almost like a whole new life. And I didn't truly enter recovery until January 24th of 2018.
Okay. So can you tell me a little bit about what your addiction looked like? You had mentioned that you had started smoking pot at what, 13?
Well, 15, 16, somewhere in that era.
So how did that manifest to where you became addicted to substances?
Well, like I kind of expressed the negative feelings, the emotions, okay. And that stopped the thinking. It was, you know, the substance entered, and it was an escape. It was an absolute escape. And I guess I would probably, if I could explain it in an illustration. So negative feelings would be like a river rushing. And the drugs would be like a dam. When you're high, you dam those emotions back. But unfortunately, you use that substance, it's there, but behind it, all this emotion stuff that you're shutting out is building and building and building. And then you take the substance out, or that's why you have to keep using that. Dam breaks and your emotions flood. So it's a constant. I felt relief, and because I didn't have the coping mechanisms that I've learned in recovery.
Mm-hmm. So what did your treatment look like? What was that? How did that begin?
Well, I actually, throughout the years, I did seek treatment. I went to rehab several times, but this final time, I didn't seek treatment. the biggest thing was I was at my breaking point. I was sick and tired of the hamster wheel, the destructive patterns I was stuck in. I had experienced almost dying, being arrested, absolutely despising myself. And I just got to the point where enough was enough. And I had the knowledge and the knowing from and tools, if you want to call it that, if you will, coping. I mean, I learned a lot of things in rehab, but the problem is you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if left unapplied, it's useless. So it came to that application part. And, let's face it, drugs feel good, or why else would we use them and be overtaken? The consequences, the feeling doesn't last. The more you use, the more you need. And I feel like drug use was a symptom of something much deeper, an emptiness and a lack of personal purpose. So I set my intention to withdraw from heroin. I took 4 days completely off from life, and I went through the acute withdrawals. And the thing is I refused to listen to my addiction. It was screaming for another hit. And I knew exactly what it looked like if I gave in. Back to where I started, the endless trap of use, that horrible pattern, getting, using, not enough, ultimately withdrawal. So I was determined to get out of the pattern in the moment. And it felt like it was never going to end, the withdrawal. Unless you've experienced it, and that's why people go back to using, because I think a lot of times mentally you've gotten to that point, but the physical withdrawals of opiates are like nothing other than, you have insomnia, you're physically sick, you're cold, you're shaking, you're sweating, you're uncomfortable, your body's in pain. So, you really need to just be determined. Absolutely set your mind, set your intention, and don't give in to the voice of addiction that's screaming at you in your head.
I had talked to you before, and you said that during these 4 days, you did a lot of reading.
Well, that kind of came after. The 4 days was basic. I was kind of in survival mode. So how do I make myself comfortable? I did not use medications. Although in rehab before, I did experience the Suboxone taper, and that does take the edge off. So when I made this decision that, I had to act, and I didn't have a lot of time, like I said, I had the skills, I had the knowing, but the application was the other thing. So I used more or less, I guess we could call it water therapy, because I sat in a hot tub or jacuzzi tub. I put earbuds in, listened to music, distracted my thoughts, kind of tried to get out of my head. And it was basically just enduring it. And just because I already knew what the end result was, like I talked about, that pattern, and I had to break it.
Is that what was different this last time? That, okay, just enough is enough. I'm done. I feel like maybe I have all the tools that I need. I just have to apply.
Exactly.
Okay.
Determination, mindset.
What about the people that you associated with?
Well, the one thing is, through the many times of treatment, the one thing I had to accept is that I couldn't stay married to an active addict. I had to, the pivotal moment is giving up associating with anyone that is participating in the things that you don't want in your life. And it's heart-wrenching, because the paradox is, here's the man that I chose to take vows with, and here's the man that, and that's the whole thing, is we're not just, addicts aren't bad people. At the core, we're suffering, we're good people. We're just suffering from a disease. And I'll get into that a little bit more of how I feel about that. But so ultimately I had to choose love of self and desire for a different, more fulfilling life. So I had to quit focusing on the problem and start focusing on the solution. One thing that I realized, that the majority of my suffering was self-inflicted. So the solution was to stop inflicting myself. And I took accountability, and in a sense took my personal power back. I forgave myself and let go. And so I searched out how to achieve lasting contentment. without negative consequences, and that's where I found recovery.
What about how do you feel that the community views people who have addictions?
Well, there's definitely a stigma.
Mm-hmm.
And here's how I would like to, I'd like to pose a question. So how about if we would view it as what it is, a disease? And what I like about when I break up the word dis-ease. So dis-ease of mind and body. So we as addicts, we don't choose, like as a young person, I didn't think, well, my goal is to grow up as a junkie. No, it was the disease or dis-ease that led me into suffering from addiction. And, you know, there's a lot of diseases out there, diseases. I mean, people don't choose to be inflicted by cancer or diabetes. You know, I mean, it's the same type of thing. So maybe we should, you know, develop an understanding and compassion for people suffering. And the interesting point that you mentioned that reading was a huge thing, research was a huge thing for my recovery journey. So with early on in withdrawal and recovery, one of the symptoms of withdrawal and early recovery is from opiates is insomnia. So I spent a lot of time not able to sleep. And so I spent countless hours researching, reading on self-growth, listening to TED Talks, YouTube-related videos to growth and healing. And it wasn't always related specifically to addiction, you know, and what I did find with a lot of my research is it's like mind over matter has a lot. Your mind and your body is connected. So therefore, same thing with the outcome with people that have cancer or people that have other ailments, autoimmune disease, things of that nature. The underlying cause could be stress, and you can either give up and fall into your diagnosis, or you can get in the mindset that you're going to be a survivor of that diagnosis. And I think the same can be with addiction.
So we talked a little bit about community, and we talked about you separating yourself from, you know, people that you used with, your best friend, i.e. your husband. So who did you surround yourself with? What did that look like? How'd that happen?
Well, my family, my kids, obviously, I needed to heal those relationships, and they people that weren't using. I didn't actually change my environment. I still live in the same house. I still work at the same job. So a lot of it was changing my perception, changing my perspective. And yeah, my kids were huge for me, the love. And although my youngest son is now 16, so he was just coming into adolescence / teenage. And so it was tough. He was having a tough time. I was having, I mean, just how do we connect after I haven't been? You know, it was almost like meeting a stranger again. But so I'm going off point here. I'm sorry.
Well,
but so ultimately, you have to change yourself. You have to take those steps of find something that inspires you, really get into, well, I can really kind of talk about that. My practice of recovery is a daily thing. And at first I needed to, I plugged into activities that I felt most like myself. So prior to using or you know, during periods of abstinence, because as a drug addict and when you're in your active addiction, that takes up all your time and your mind. So what I did do is I got into writing again. I love music, listening to music. I don't make music. And riding and being around horses and nature. Nature was huge. Connecting to life. And I'm talking about just being outside or just connecting with people, animals, anything, you know, plants, you know, things of just life. connecting with that and practicing my recovery daily. I took a holistic approach to recovery, which was, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And so I start my day with meditation, prayer, gratitude, appreciation, and is huge for me because it kind of you got to kind of reset yourself into not just kind of looking at what's right in life and not at what's wrong, and kind of where your focus is where things tend to grow. So I tried to focus as much as I could on what I wanted out of my life and not what I didn't do. I let go of my past, and it took me a long time. I mean, of not this time, but I tried, tried to get sober before, but I beat myself up constantly. I just had to let it go. Just forgive myself, let it go.
So what advice would you have somebody who is entering recovery currently, especially with, COVID stuff going on? And, would you say like surround yourself with like-minded people or?
Absolutely. And you also, I read in a book once that wherever you go, there you are. So it's almost like you can't run from yourself. So you definitely need to get comfortable with yourself. And a lot of that is inner work. Yes, community is huge, surrounding yourself. And that's actually how we met.
That's kind of how we met, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the recovery coaches, support networks, it's huge. Because the one thing is with a recovery coach and the recovery coach that you set me up with, was they're there to walk with you and support you, not do it for you. So when you you ask what advice I would give, I can basically tell you, time does heal, patience. But I can share with you, I feel like I can share with you what advice I told myself to keep myself on track, because we're so individual. And so the advice and the things that I told myself was, don't allow yourself to be swept away by your thoughts. Life is so much bigger than our thoughts. Let go of destructive patterns. So how I did that, and I would strongly advise to mindfulness and meditation, because that was huge at getting the ruminating thoughts, to be able to focus present moment, to be able to not live in the past, live in the future, but really welcome life in this moment. And I told myself that I am enough. And, it's effort, not perfection. And if you have a setback, forgive yourself and keep moving forward, because you can beat yourself up back in that hole, or you can, say, we're human, we're imperfect. Okay, this is what I learned from that mistake, and learn your lesson and move forward. Like, oh, I won't do that again, or maybe that was risky behavior or risky thought, and do your best to just get back on track. And it's not a big deal. We all, recovery is not start here, end here. It can be up, it can be down, it can be, but yet it's not like active addiction where you're way up, you're way down, you're way up, you're way down. Life just kind of flows.
Awesome.
And I'm patient, kind, loving, and forgiving, not only towards myself, but to others. I mean, and your inner environment, and what I mean is your mood, how you feel. Definitely, when you start changing your inner environment, doing that inner work, your external, the things around you change. Or maybe you just start seeing things differently. People start reacting more positively to you. And so then, in essence, that kind of mirrors back to you where you're at.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you coming in and talking with everybody tonight. Once again, this is Julie Bowden. My name is Chad Woodman, and if you have any questions for me or Julie, you can always reach me at 608-314-7019. I'd be happy to talk to you and put you in contact with Julie. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.